Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Will Richmond, and I'm the editor and publisher of Video News, and this is our session with Maker Studios. So we've got David Sievers, who's VP of Operations for Maker, and Jeremy Welt, who's Head of Marketing. And I'll throw it to you guys. I know you have a reel you brought with you.
Yeah, we'll queue up a quick 2-minute reel on Maker Studios. We put this on our website, and it's something that gives you a little taste into the culture that we're trying to build around our talent and the plans that we're building out. So let's take a quick look at that.
Special effects, props, set dressing.
Animation director.
An actor.
Executive
I'm
producer.
passionate about anything having to do with new media, online video.
Content.
I'm from Mexico.
Idaho, actually.
I am an artist.
Who am I? I make videos.
Maker. I work at Maker Studios.
I love working here.
I would say I learned everything I know here.
What do you want?
To express myself.
You don't have to wait for someone else to be creative or to be cast in something. You can just create your own project.
Help others. Questing for your dreams.
I sing, I write songs.
Constantly creating.
When I grow up. What do you want?
Oh, wait,
What are you passionate about?
Doing what you love to do.
I like to make things that get reactions from people.
Pure energy, pure creativity.
a little hope.
Changing this entertainment industry.
Maker.
My greatest fear is
Failure.
Fish. I went snorkeling one time in Hawaii. Huge mistake.
Is not to be fearless.
Buscar ser feliz en la vida.
Maker Studios is born out of the passion of empowering an individual.
I am.
I am.
I am. I am. I am.
I am.
I am. I am.
Maker.
All right, very cool. So as flashed by there right at the end, 500 million views per month. You guys are one of the top YouTube partners. So let's start there. How are you guys doing it?
Great, man. I think it's been it's been a crazy year. I think definitely both for the space and for Maker. I think we've seen a lot of like really cool and interesting things happening, and also a lot of growth, both as far as like what we're doing in the space, what other people are doing. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of really cool stuff that I think is coming down, but has both come down over the last year and definitely coming up over the next year.
I think some of those numbers, we've even grown beyond a lot of those numbers already. I think the main thing that's happened is we've started launching our vertical channels. The first 3 is part of the YouTube program we launched. A real soft launch of our music channel, our Moms network called the Moms View, and Tutele, our Spanish language programming. Those are off to a great start, especially on the mom side. The audience participation, the growth, the numbers of subscribers are ramping up very quickly, and we're seeing a lot of success, and we've already had kind of our first version of all of those. So what we're doing now is already refining our programming, getting ready for the second wave of those verticals.
So talk a little about the programming that specifically that are in those verticals that are working. What shows are doing great, and what are you kind of learning from that?
Well, I think the first thing that's interesting is the approach that Maker takes to doing the verticals. So we have this like network operating system where we have our main hub channels that are Maker owned and that we work with our talent to make original programming for. So those, like the Moms View is an example of a network where we have 3 regional programs each week. But in addition to that, we also have individual mom bloggers who have their own shows. We have 8 different channels of individual moms who participate and create their own programming. So what that really allows us to do is to work the audience from both angles. It's really more direct to the audience and very individual, unique voice of the talent. But then we can also have these more professional shows where the moms can come together, and it's a little bit more TV-style programming that has 3 days a week. What's interesting about that is the audience development. So it's this very unique network of talent that does their own thing and shows where we put the talent together, and then we start to cross-promote the individual talent with the shows and really develop the audience much faster and much more authentically by having the individual shows in addition to the network shows.
And is that considered part of kind of what you guys think of as the value add to creators that are coming to you guys and working with you, is kind of learning how to develop audience and promote them?
Yeah, no, it totally is. I mean, the reel showed, really there was more of our employees in that reel than there were necessarily the talent, and that's indicative of what we're building. There's 120 people who show up every day, dedicated full-time to production. That all they're there is to help talent make content. So we're adding value in that. We're not taking over the content and we're not doing it for them, but we're helping people to elevate the bar on what they're doing on YouTube, or be able to expand their offering, make more content. And then, yeah, a lot of the cross-promotion is definitely what we're all about. There's some real science and working mechanisms that are going on a little bit behind the scenes, but a little bit like very, genuinely. And it's just an upfront like, hey, I'm this talent, I dug this other talent, we work together, and Maker's helping behind the scenes to create that content, but it's just an ecosystem that exists that people can just talk to each other in and create content.
So,
I think it gives more opportunity. I think there's programming at every different type of level depending on what your goals are as talent. Some people want to keep the very kind of more lo-fi, authentic, talking direct to their audience, and then they want to explore on being part of more of a scheduled and well-produced shows. They don't have to give up all the authenticity to participate in something that maybe has a little bit higher production value, and it gives a really good opportunity for people to kind of explore and grow their craft. The idea of connecting the talent under verticals and assigning them to these hub channels is, I think, a big part of what the new YouTube platform is about. And the way that those connections can happen, both from a marketing and a programming mentality, it just really opens up the game plan on how you can present yourself and how you can participate.
So let's talk about YouTube a little bit more. You guys have obviously kind of cracked the code with how to work with YouTube and how to kind of tap into that audience. So share with us some of the lessons you guys have learned, and what's your experience with YouTube? What are you guys excited about with this new kind of channelization strategy that they're pursuing now?
I think one thing that was great was that we started off on the right foot. We were founded by YouTubers originally, and some of the people in that reel are actually the owners of the company and give us our direction. And they started off with the audience that was there, and they figured that out. And from there, they were basically, let's bring our friends in, show them how to build this audience. And then, more recently, especially with the channels program, one of them is moms, right? And everyone's like, moms on YouTube, it's probably not a lot of them there. After 1 month of working, we're about 5 weeks in, we've got 500,000 subscribers within that network. So we were able, really quickly to take lessons we learned from pre-existing audiences and apply that to pushing into new areas where, not a lot of people are creating or doing a lot of work, and we're having some success with that.
Have things evolved to a point where you'd say there are best practices now for how to work with YouTube and even more broadly, how to kind of program for the web only?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of basic rules for how to make content on YouTube that I think, YouTube's got a great creators manual that outlines it. We have probably figured some stuff out on top of that, as a lot of people have. For web, I think there are some really basic rules. Like you want to be engaging quickly. You don't want to necessarily, you don't want to do what a movie does and put 2 minutes of intro credits on a piece of content because people are going to check out before that. So, I mean, there's definitely some basic.
Yeah, and I think there's two types of best practices. There's the real specific ecosystem best practices of YouTube's. How do you tag your videos? How do you do things to make sure that you're found in that sea of content? YouTube does a great job of empowering people to learn those things on their own. And then there's a second aspect, which is the cultural aspect of the best practices. And again, this concept of people working together as groups to develop their programming, partner, and culturally create an environment where people want to share audience and self-promote each other is something that I think Maker has uniquely cracked and figured out how to empower. When you take, the second thing about the YouTube best practices is that if you really focus in on what's possible, it becomes very time consuming, and that's one of the areas where we can provide help. When you take, I really like focusing on the mom's view and how Maker has lined up the individual talent and then combined them into the original shows on the mom's view. The way that that talent works together to deploy every video is a very well thought out system. There's really literally about a 20-step process that any video that goes into the system for any one of the individual moms or for the network, that's followed, because there's all these interesting things you can do with playlists, with favoriting, with the new YouTube feed, and curating all of that stuff together to make everything grow is some of the secret sauce that you can add on top of the playbook that YouTube provides you.
So are the days of just putting a video up on YouTube and voila, it becomes a viral hit, are those days kind of gone at this point? Is it more systematized now?
Well, I mean, the things that are going to go viral are not the things that are intended to go viral. I think, as a general rule, I think, whenever you're approaching the platform, you have to create your content with a brand. You can't just make a piece of content, target a demo, and upload it, and it's just going to work. You have to, think about the audience you're going after. What is that audience currently doing? Where are they at? How can I build a plan, a release schedule that works with them to bring them here, and who can help me get that audience.
Yeah, I don't think the days are gone, but I think the question is how you turn that into longevity is where the focus is. And so you can be successful at getting a spike and having one video do really well, but it's that thinking of how does that turn into something that sustains itself. And once that maybe a couple of those spikes don't happen and some of your content doesn't get that huge push, how are you doing that as part of an overall plan, again, to make sure that you can continue to have an audience and grow an audience if not everyone's getting that one-time hit? So let's talk about audience a little bit more. Who are the kind of the main audiences for the program you guys are creating, and how are you reaching them other than the obvious kind of cross promotion that you already talked about on YouTube? What's the way you're getting to them? Well, again, it starts with the content, and then we basically apply all the best practices that we can to make sure that people who are looking for that kind of content can find it. Then we work with communities of our talent to figure out, hey, are there audiences that exist that might like this program, and how can we bring those things together? And then from there, one of the things that I think is becoming more important is the social media aspect. So how do you start to make sure that you have YouTube on lockdown? Then you have to start plugging in Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and the website, and develop your audiences on all those platforms and do it in a way that is an extension of the programming. It's not that hard to just take your video and post it in a bunch of different places. What is a little bit more challenging is to integrate those different ecosystems into the programming itself and into the communication with your audience, so it does feel like you're reaching out to them in authentic places and you're delivering them the content wherever they're living, but you're taking a little bit of time to customize it for that platform. That's some of the challenge of the growth, because again, YouTube is so big you can spend a lot of time just there, but it is more important to start to get those other touch points. The new YouTube homepage feed is pretty cool in terms of how it curates YouTube, but it also starts to allow you to curate your social networks so those become more important, I think, in the overall promotion of your content. Then what becomes really interesting is when you start to take some of this content outside of those ecosystems. When you start talking to gatekeepers and editorial people who make decisions about what goes on what blog. In the music world, for example, Pitchfork, they can make or break a band. We're making sure that our talent has shots at those pages as well, and it's a very interesting process because you can have one of the biggest videos on YouTube, but editors can be very cranky people, and sometimes that can be a negative. They're like, I don't want to just promote or get behind the next big thing that's just a blip for a moment. I have an editorial curation strategy. So again, it ties back to our feeling of coming up with that longer term strategy and that longevity, because when you start to extend the brand and marketing in other places than just social and YouTube, having that vision and being able to talk about that long-term plan becomes much more important to start to really spread the programming out. So when I listen to what you just said, my reaction is there's a whole new playbook that's basically being written right now by you guys and by others for how to break talent and how to kind of break them across a pretty large platform, YouTube and other platforms. Does that feel right to you guys, or are you guys looking to other people who you think have already, kind of broken this, and now you're kind of piggybacking on that? I think there's been a ton of innovators in the space. What's great is the platform is so new, and it changes a lot, and so you have to keep up with it, both through your own internal efforts and also looking at what other people are doing. The other piece of that too is I think we're able not only to just break talent, but we're also to partner, take this playbook and partner with other, people who aren't necessarily talent, but are looking to share content on YouTube
and build their own authentic communities, we now have enough of a playbook where we really feel like, like this is something we can work with people on and share a little bit of it.
I agree. I think it is a whole new playbook for talent development. YouTube's become this platform where you can globally develop your brand and your programming around the world, and you can start to monetize that in the artist development platform, right? If you go to music and TV and a lot of these industries, there was like a set of steps that you would do. Right. You could go online and Amazon and you could buy a book like How to Break a Band or How to Get Your Pitch in front of the right people. And what we're able to do is provide this new lane for talent to develop and give them a little bit more freedom to maybe find out what they want to be as they grow their career. It's not quite as rigid. And that's my favorite part, is watching talent find their voice and develop their skills and hone what they're good at the same time they're growing their connections with fans. The ability to do those things simultaneously, I think, is part of the game changer. Yeah. As opposed to having to hone your craft, make some end pitch product, and then go try to get people to buy into that. Not to say that that's still not important, and in some ways is not still done today. But there's nothing like watching talent and grow right and figure out what they're good at the same time that they're building those connections directly with their fans.
Yeah. I was watching some video of your founders last night talking about sort of their background, their vision, et cetera. And they're pretty emphatic about saying, like, this is not a stepping stone to establish TV or film or whatever. Like, this is the medium in its own right. Is that kind of the way you guys view this as well? Maker's kind of a new breed of studio, kind of new playbook?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the great things is Maker intends to do some of that stuff on its own. Like we're talking to people who, want to experiment with a feature film fund or things like that. So we really do believe that, you can come into the Maker ecosystem, with an idea, or maybe you're an aspiring director or writer, and you can come in and you can start working on your craft and honing it and doing it in a way that's new and cutting edge in the digital landscape, and that eventually there are going to be opportunities for you as a talented person to make really great stuff that you can be proud of. I mean, not that you're not proud of the stuff you make every day, but the thing you would write to your mother about and that she'd put on the fridge and tell all her friends about, that kind of stuff.
Can you put a video on the fridge? Actually, she attached her iPad.
Get magnetic iPad case or something.
All right, excellent. Talk a little bit about the online video landscape in general, right? So one thing I think is interesting is we've seen some talent like Tom Hanks and others kind of come into the space. At the same time, we see guys like you are taking talent that isn't as developed and kind of bringing them up. So do you see sort of that convergence happening where established kind of Hollywood talents embracing the medium, organic stuff is happening, and it's all kind of mashing together for audiences to sort of figure out what they want to tap into?
I think it's really important to build your brand online in this day and age. A lot of brands come to us and say, we don't want our branded content all over our channel. We just want an authentic audience, so that when the time is right and when we have a message to tell, there's someone there to listen to it, right? Yeah. So I think celebrities building their ecosystem out so that they are ready to share those types of messages, or brands building their ecosystem out so they're ready to share their messages, is a really good and smart exercise for people to go through. Not only are you going to get to have fun and talk with your people and really connect with them in the meantime, but also when it's time to spread your message and when you need to tell people about something, there are people there who are not only going to hear it, but they're engaged with you, and they're going to probably listen to what you're asking them to do, or at least try it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's very important that people come into the space and develop their brand here.
Well, I was just going to add that I think that what's interesting to watch is in the early days of YouTube, and it still happens today, the thing for established talent was just to be on YouTube, right? Like if you showed up there, you were kind of making a statement, like, wow, I can't believe this huge star is now on YouTube, and that was enough. You kind of felt like you were doing it. And now what you see YouTube working on and the talent working on is like, well, it's not enough just to be there. Now this existing talent that is maybe very successful in other media needs to really understand how to do it successfully, as opposed to just being there. So what I'm getting a kick on is watching people really commit to the medium and really not just repurposing what they were doing somewhere else, but focusing on doing the best practices in the YouTube playbook. It doesn't really matter how massive a star you are. There's certain things if you don't do correctly, and there's certain things that they could learn from our talent on how to be effective. And so watching those two worlds actually combine as opposed to kind of just repurposing is really exciting.
And your sense, no doubt, is that there's enough growth still in this medium, lots of growth ahead, that someone like a Tom Hanks coming in doesn't in any way kind of crowd out what talent that isn't quite as developed is also trying to do.
It's so funny because we'll at times get talent within our own, within Maker who feel like they're doing the same thing, and so they get mad at each other because they're competing or whatever. But I think the lesson that we've learned is that viewership on YouTube is not a zero-sum game. Like, users are here to watch content that they want to watch, and if you make something that's compelling enough and you can get eyeballs on it, like, they'll come back if they like it.
Right, right.
So I'm not concerned about being crowded out, so to speak, but I think, like, if you're, there's a certain degree to which, okay, I'm a user, I've spent like 5 hours on the site, it's time for bed,
Or not.
or not, but so you need to be a little bit smart in how you are moving your users around, because you don't want to lose them and you don't want them out of your ecosystem. But as far as people coming in, I think it's about making good content and making it available.
Right. Let's talk a little about devices. So, at CES recently, connected TVs were kind of all the rage. Tablet forecasts are off the charts. Gaming consoles are everywhere. How important is it to you guys that your audiences be able to watch on multiple devices as opposed to just the computer? Is that like a key part of your strategy, what the talent wants also? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the talent wants to get paid, and so when these places monetize, that's great. I think what we respond to mostly is users and what they want to see and how they want to interact, and then we're going to build a business around that makes sense. So, and YouTube being such a great partner has got us on mobile, has got us on Xbox Now Live. So there's a lot of devices, Google TVs, where you can sit back and watch our content. And because we have a great platform partner, they've done that. I do think, there's a little bit of desire to have a little bit of control over that experience as well. So, yeah, we think about these things. They're definitely part of the conversation we have internally about how do we continue to write the playbook on these devices. And, especially, I think the TV screen is going to change a lot in the way people interact with it over the next couple of years. And what does that mean for us? And what are the opportunities, and how can we, does that affect the way we even make our content? Yeah. All of a sudden we're, at home I've got a 73-inch huge, screen, and never before have we tried to edit, or, for something like that. Right. We've tried to edit for a computer screen.
Right.
So.
It does seem like it's a pretty big change for you guys, right? If to the extent that most of your audience traditionally has been watching on devices that they can interact with relatively easily, then you move to a connected TV type environment where maybe the interaction isn't quite as easy. Sort of changes the game a little bit for you guys, no?
Well, yeah, and I think consumers are leading the way and figuring it out on their own. It's really interesting to think of the different ways you can watch YouTube on your TV. I mean, I have the YouTube interface on my Panasonic smart TV, but I also just have an HDMI cable that goes into my laptop, and I play around with both different ways. One thing for sure is that a lot of our content looks amazing on huge HD flat screens. So certainly, we were pulling up one of our top shows, Epic Rap Battle, and we were watching that on our huge HD TVs, and that stuff's just translating really naturally and really well. It looks gorgeous, and I think what you see is a lot of content creators. People kind of kick around the word lo-fi, but the amount of thought that does go into it, I think the content creators and consumers are thinking about both those things. And exactly how the ecosystem is officially formed around those things, I still think has a little ways to go. The device experience and the TV experience, again, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Do you pull up youtube.com on your iPad and go to the site? Do you use the app? Do you, again, use your smart TV interface via YouTube or Google+, or are you just hacking it and putting your cable right in? I think we're still in that experimental phase, but one thing for sure is that the consumers are probably a little bit ahead of where some of the things are in terms of they've already adopted the way they want to do it. But it is nice to see that to me, a lot of the stuff, it plays well on a big screen as well.
Yeah, that's great. So we've got about 5 minutes left. We can go ahead and open it up for questions. I don't know if anybody wants to kind of come up to the mic and ask these guys how they're doing it. Here's a question.
The great thing about YouTube is the data that you get from your users. Tell me about how you use that data in your creative process.
That's a great question. We talked about this before the panel, and when I started answering it to my friend David here, he told me I could never give that answer because it was going to be 10 minutes long. But I'll give you the brief version of it. I think to be successful, you need to be looking at, you're looking at clip level data, channel level data, and you're looking at that data across a whole bunch of different countries. That in itself is pretty intense. Looking at certain clips for some reason that perform in a country that you didn't expect and maybe underperformed in another country, looking at that global data is really interesting. Looking at the insight data of the tune in and the tune out ratio, looking at the demographics, looking at which videos drove subscribers. That's such an important thing to take a look at. And so the views is just like really such a starting point. It doesn't matter how many views you get in a video. We're going to go and look at all those metrics that are below it and then pivot those metrics around the different territories that the clips are having success in. So that's an incredible part of YouTube that lets you do things that I don't think any medium let you have that amount of data. And when you start to then cross that over to social networks and see how your clip performed on Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter and looking at all those different conversion rates and then which of those platforms drove people back to the channel. We use tracking links on all those mediums. So I haven't actually done this, but I could actually break down like the number of hours that can be spent per clip and the number of things that you look at per clip. And you could literally sit up here and have a whole panel on the data associated with one video clip, and you could have a productive conversation for the whole time about that.
Yeah, I think what's great and it's almost funny to me is that we've built a data warehouse and we're plugging business intelligence tools into this stuff. So I think the data has become incredibly important to us when we can see, we put an annotation that looks like this on this type of video and that caused a 30% lift in viewership the next day. It was like, holy cow, like, okay, let's figure out how to do that more. Yeah.
And then there's the part about empowering talent to know what to do with that. That to me is the most exciting part, right? So you can have all this data and you can look at it from a business standpoint, but when you can break that down so that the talent can understand what does that mean for what they're doing, what does that mean for their art, and what does that mean for their career, those connections are some of the most exciting moments because the talent can go take action on that immediately. They don't have to wait for a whole chain of events to happen. They can understand it and digest it. What's even more exciting is the sophistication of the talent creators today and their understanding innately of this stuff when they're making their content. We always talk about Maker. We like to include that mindset around data from the guy holding the light all the way down to the viewer so that everyone's thinking about that data is going to come back and we're going to know a lot of things about what you did and how they affected that particular clip. So one of our goals is going to be to really focus on making sure that talent has access to that in a way that can help them be better creators.
All right, time for another question.
Sure. Do you use branded content in any of the videos, and what's your experience been?
Yeah, we'll do branding content all the time. I think we're pretty quick to turn a brand away. I mean, it's got to be a good fit for our talent. We have to feel like there's a real authentic opportunity here, something our talent would actually want to talk about. And then we have to figure out how do we work that into the content that we're already making anyways, because a lot of times we will occasionally go out of our way to make something special, but if it's generally going to be like, a great example is one of our dudes who made like a music video for Arby's, I think, while they had this user-generated contest going, and it was to raise awareness. So he made his own premium user-generated examples, essentially. And so, we'll do things like that quite a bit.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah, right here.
In the previous session, we heard executives from Yahoo and Microsoft say they produce content that gets funded by brands, and then if they don't get funded, they probably don't produce it. How do you produce? How do you decide what to produce or what to do?
Yeah, I mean, we're uploading thousands of pieces of content a month, and so we've got a schedule and a plan, and we already kind of know what we're going to make. Generally speaking, we'll only change the plan when a brand comes to us, and it's generally through YouTube. YouTube has a program that they're working on. They need some talent, they need some content, and we'll partner with them in that way. But I think for the most part,
and there's different types, right? So we're really focused on these three on our vertical channels. So when we talk about the moms, music, and Spanish programming, those things are pre-thought out. And those things really have a strategy and approach and how we're going to build the audience. And some of them went faster and some of them are going a little bit slower, but we're really committed to the long-term strategy around those verticals, our Tuteli, the Mom's View, and the Maker music channels. Then there's a whole, like I said, then there's this whole second part, which is the individual content creators who are part of those networks doing their own thing. So one of the great things about Maker is we get to kind of have both sides. There's some stuff that doesn't need to worry about brands, where the talent is building audience and connecting and doing it in their own way. And then there's other types of programming that we feel is really more created to partner with brands. So I really like having the ability to have both things going on. And then, again, like I said at the beginning, once a brand starts to get interested, the ability to cross-promote and move from something more professional down to something more authentic and move up and down in that spectrum. Once a brand gets interested, we can give them like all these different rivers of content to tap into. So we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to that.
We are down to 20 seconds, so I'm going to let you guys have the last word. Just look ahead to 2012 and give us a nugget of what you think might surprise us, all about what Maker's doing or what's happening in the online video space.
I think 2012 is going to become a year, I mean, at least for us, of further empowering our talent. We both want to, transparency is a huge issue for us. I think there's a lot of information that is blocked from talent that they need to be able to see in order to run their business. We also want to give them the tools that Maker has to be able to build their own mini makers if they want. You know, some people are focused on what is the long tail of my career? And some people are like, hey, if I could incubate my own friends in this system, that would be really great. And so I think a lot of empowerment is going to continue to happen over the next year.
Great. Jeremy?
And then you're just going to see continued growth in the quality of talent and a growth in the audience side, and you're going to start to see these brands in the traditional media world and the YouTube world kind of come together, and eventually it starts to equalize and just become great content.
Great. Well, thanks very much for your time, guys, and Maker Studios.